So anyway, uh, they went out to do a show one day, story, and Jeff Simon called me from somewhere in the Caribbean. He said, George, we have a problem. The story we're here to do, the guy's no good. He didn't even show up. He said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, you got to find something. He said, well, there is a sign where they have some trained flamencos on the other side of the island. I said, I never heard of a train. He said, well, I didn't either. I said, well, go do that. We're there. What the heck? So he goes over. He calls me when he gets there. He says, George, there's more bad news. These flamencos don't do anything. I said, well, what is the trained flamenco? He says, there's just a guy here who speaks no English that chases the flamencos around with a stick. He said, that's the trained flamenco. And I said, shoot that. Jen, shoot you trying to get a story. So they photographed the crew with this guy saying, flamenco been good to me, chasing him around with a stick. And it was hysterical. It was accident. Again, if anything can be for anybody watching this, if I can say anything that'll help them, trust the accident. Go with the accident. Say, wait a minute, what happens? Don't shut the camera off. We could never say cut on the laugh-in stage. Cut was something I didn't want to hear. I would say cut if it was, because more stuff happened. They went out one day, and Courtney Conti was with Mark Russell in Washington. And they were wandering around, and they'd finished early, and Courtney said, Mark, look at these two women. And there were two women on a park bench with their stockings rolled up below the knee, and they were white, they were, cotton dresses, and one had on an apron. And Courtney said to Mark, go over there and talk to him. Mark Russell sat down, one of the most astute political observers the country has had since Will Rogers. And he said, well, hi, girls, how's everything? And they're going along. What about that gross national product? Did you see what they voted on in the Congress today? And he was laughing with these two women, had no idea what he was talking about. They were hysterical with these two women, and it was accident. Accident is gold. That's it.
Now, when That's Incredible came around, how did that impact your show and the ratings?
Well, I think it cheapened it a lot. But see, we would do those things, but then they would stage those events. One guy lost a foot on the fourth take jumping over a car. I mean, it was the ugly sister. I mean, there were things on the show that were good, but it fed off of people rather than contributed to them. And I was never a big fan of That's Incredible any more than I am the Fear Factor now, which I think is, I guess people love it, so I don't want to put them down. But what is that? It's like stopping on the freeway to watch an accident. You stop, but you're not proud that you did. So That's Incredible came out. When Real People hit, they said, let's do That's Incredible. When Laugh-In hit, they said, let's do Hee Haw. I mean, there's always somebody that says, how can I make a cheaper version of this? So That's Incredible was on, did well. But That's Incredible, and you go to things that had been staged that were forced. So I was never a big fan of That's Incredible.
Now,
See?
Real People ended then in 1984.
Yeah.
What did you do afterwards?
Oh, God, I've done tons of specials, and I've done, as I said, I did The Cosby Show, and I did Sinatra, and I did Sammy Davis, and we did specials all over, because at that point, Variety didn't, have series and so forth, but specials, and we did, God, I forget, but tons of, we did everything from Sammy Davis' 60th anniversary to Welcome Home America when the guys came back from the Gulf War, to Sinatra's 75th birthday, his 80th birthday, and recently the inauguration of President George W. Bush. There's a strange choice, huh?
Now, you created the American Comedy Awards, your own award show, in 1987. Why did you create the American Comedy Awards?
I felt that the business focused on everybody but the comics. The other award shows would say, we got to have a comic. Who's going to host it? We must have a comic because they're the ones that can think on their feet, right? So then once they got the comic, then they said, okay, now let's have everything else, and they'd forget about it. And I thought the comic contributes a very vital part of our civilization. So I said, let's honor the comics and give them the dignity that they deserve. And it was, 15 years. We're not going to do one this year because it's a strange year for comedy. I don't think I could go out there now and say what a great year for comedy, because you have Leno and Letterman, Dennis Miller, Bill Maher, and you have Will and Grace and Family, and then you have stuff like the Man Show, it's not a great time to celebrate a whole year of comedy because there wasn't really that much. You got a big hole in there.
Is that you feel in the wake of what happened September 11th, or you just feel it's been a bad year in comedy?
I just don't think it was a great year for comedy. I mean, the films were not that funny. See, they're giving him a note. The note says, "Do not forget to bring home some bread tonight. And please try to get him out of here so we can go home and spend the evening with our families." What did the note say? Please.
No, hang on. Okay, I'm fine now.
Your fly's open?
No.
That's the best news we've had all day. My grandmother used to say, the barn door's open and nobody wants to see the horse. Okay, so... and how sweet
Your grandmother was Maudie Fricker?
Oh, yeah, how sweet of you to notice. Isn't that good? I mean, she wasn't impressed, I didn't think, but she sent you a note.
It took how many hours for her to even
notice? How many
notice?
But evidently you're not that interesting to this woman, you know? She's looking around. You can have a carrot in your ear, and she might have noticed that, but this was not that big an event in her life, I don't think. Go ahead, I'm sorry. This is dignified.
You see, we were talking about something
Did you get stuff like this with Walper and Grant Tinker? What Grant Tinker? Grant Tinker, right? Right? And David, I love David, but, you know, flies sleep on his lip now. I mean, he's just not really out there playing racquetball. But David Walper's a good friend of mine, so we'll cut that out too. I'm just teasing David.
So we're talking about the American Comedy Awards.
Grant, I'm serious, but what? American Comedy Award was great because it celebrated those people who make us laugh, and humor is a vital part of our society. Didn't you see the last election? I mean, we must laugh, and so I decided to celebrate that.
So how is the award show itself, the American Comedy Awards, changed since its inception?
Well, it's the comics voting on each other, saying who makes them laugh. So it's the best of the best voting on who's the best. And I love that show, and we'll do it next year, but I don't think we're going to do it this year. I just don't feel right about it. You know? I feel right about it. I just don't think this is the time to come out and say, let's celebrate comedy. I mean, you got Ray Romano, great show, and you got Friends, and you got Will and Grace. Those are great shows, but there's not a lot of them.
I want to talk just in general a bit about the craft of producing from your perspective. In general, what are the main duties of a producer?
Look for accidents. Look for accidents. A producer does whatever is needed. I mean, I write when I have to write, and I direct when I have to direct, but I prefer to find those elements, those people, and those force fields of energy and passion and commitment and talent and ability, and try to create an atmosphere where they can flower and get out of their way, which is not easy to do today because there's so many people in the way. But that's really what a producer does. You look, you think, you try to make people feel good and do well, you know?
You talk about accidents, and obviously a lot of the accidents you're talking about are happy accidents, but doing the kind of producing you do, like, for example, I heard a story from your friend Courtney Conti about a time where you were shooting, I think, on a tropical island somewhere, and you lost power, and you harnessed the power from a nearby...
We're shooting in Samoa.
Tell the story.
We were in Samoa shooting for Dinah Shore Show. And we arrived, and there was no power. It wasn't at all like I thought Samoa was supposed to look. It was brown. It wasn't green. And I realized when I looked out that it was getting dark, which is when the crew was going to be there in 3 days, and shoot. And there was no power. And a British submarine had come into port that night. And I looked out there as it got dark, and I said, well, they've got lights on that submarine. So we took the captain and the crew out and got them just sloshed and convinced them to run. They had cable and everything to run some power off of the submarine on shore, and then we put up some of the lights that they used on the sub, and that's what we shot with. And it turned out pretty good, but it was weird, boy, when that crew arrived and saw a submarine powering a shoot of hula dancers. But then we did a thing with Sinatra once on his birthday when he arrived in Detroit, and he was late leaving. So he was supposed to arrive in the afternoon, and he got there at night, and it was dark. So we rounded up every automobile at the airport, and we put him in a circle around where his plane was going to come. His plane drove up, and Frank thought he'd been busted, because here were about 30 cars with their headlights for him to come out and sing Detroit, Detroit. That was great. Accident. It is how do you adjust? Perhaps one of the more amusing accidents in my career was I was working in Vegas and at Ciro's, and an agent by the name of Pierre Cossette convinced Ronald Reagan to appear in a nightclub. And the nightclub they chose was the Frontier Hotel. And he rehearsed this act called the Continentals. And we took an act of 5 guys, and Ronald replaced the middle guy who owned the act. So this guy was out of work now. So anyhow, they came up, and we said, I thought it would be fun, because of his bedtime with Bonzo, to have the opening act, the Chimp Act, the Marquis family. And they were one of the best acts in show business. I don't really remember when Jack Benny did the thing where he looked in the hole. That was the Marquis family. And so we got him, and Reagan rehearsed his act, and we show up. And in the contract for the Chimp Act, he had 25 minutes, and that was it. He could do 25 minutes, but that was the contract said 25 minutes. And we go up, and the owner of the hotel, who was a guy that you didn't want to fool with, said, we just timed the show, and Ronald Reagan's doing whatever, and tell the monkeys to do 12 minutes. And I said, no, Jake, you don't understand. The monkeys can't do 12 minutes. They do 25 minutes. Just tell them to cut the act. So I go up to Gene. I said, oh, Gene. He says, hello. And I said, Gene, we got a problem with the chimps. He said, just don't try to cut the time, I said, well, Gene, I got to cut the time. You've got to do 12 minutes. Hello, these are not actors. These are not singers and dancers. These are gorillas. You cannot just say to a gorilla, hello, mate, cut half the act. It doesn't work, does it? Now, so he said, it's 25 minutes. That's what it says in the contract. Bob's your uncle. I don't want to bother you. All right, now, come on, boys. Bum, bum, bum. So I said, Jake, I got a problem cutting this act. They got to do the 25 minutes. He said, oh, you got a problem hearing? He said, 12 minutes. That's the act. So I said, look, Gene, we got a problem. He said, George, it's 25 minutes. That's it. These are gorillas. I said, you want to meet some gorillas? I'll show you some gorillas, So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I said, it is 25 minutes. That's the contract. That's what you're going to do. It doesn't say that 25 minutes are going to be on stage. We're going to do the first 12 minutes here in the hall. He said, hello, to a brick wall, a bleeding brick wall. These gorillas, hey, 25 minutes, pal. So they go out in the hall, hello, blah, 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 that night, and they come out, and 12 minutes before 8 o'clock, we start the act in the hall, ding, 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 and at exactly 8 o'clock, we open the door, and they go out and they do the act. And Gene is really pissed. And the chimps, of course, have never worked through a wall before, so they're a little disoriented. And so it's going along. Gene now starting to drink a little. I'm starting to drink a little, but these guys haven't ventilated either one of us yet, so I figure I'm in good shape. So about the third night, we're there. Ronald Reagan comes on, and now we're ready to go. Everything, 10 minutes of 8, we're ready, 12 minutes of 8. And a big guard comes over and he says, Mr. Kozlov says to hold the show. By now, the chimps have started their act. And I said, what do you mean hold the show? No, they're doing their 12. These are gorillas. These are not actors. I can't. By now, I'm talking about gorillas. I said, no, you can't just stop and start. He said, well, Jake says to hold the show. I said, Gene, can we hold? Hello, what are you, crazy? These are bleeding chimps. These are gorillas. We can't just say, hello, mate, hold the show. So it's now 8 o'clock, and the chimps are banging into the door because that's what they've now been doing for about almost a week. And it's chaos backstage. Then the guard comes back and he says, Mr. Kozlov said to go ahead and start the show now. Gene says, I can't start the show. I did half of the bleed show. So I said, Gene, I open the door and the chimps go on stage. And you never saw anything like this in your life. They're swinging from the lights. They're swinging from the microphones. And the band leader had been flirting with this one chimp, just kidding around. And she's now trying to give him a little stup. And one of the big ones goes out in the audience, sits down at the table, and drank a bottle of Jack Daniels. And they're running all over the theater. Everything is total chaos. And finally, Gene gets them all back, and he's got chains around him, and they go back. And I'm going, oh, God. Oh, boy. And now a tap on my shoulder. Mr. Kozlov wants to see you. So I said, Jake, look, the man it has his head in his hands. He's like this. And I said, this is one angry saloon owner. And I said, Jake, let me explain. He said, don't explain anything. He said, that's the funniest thing I ever saw in my life. I said, yeah, I thought it was pretty funny myself. He said, I'll forget all that other stuff. Have him just do that. I said, Jake, these are gorillas. I can't have them do the act in the hall and interrupt them and expect them to come out and get drunk and fly. I said, this never. You got this hearing problem, right? That's the only act I want to see with the gorillas. So I said, Gene, he says, don't start. Don't even start with me. So I finally went over and I said, Jake, look, they're all ready to do exactly what you want, but we've got to talk to your insurance broker because these are gorillas and they could hurt somebody. What do you mean? He's hurt somebody. I'll hurt you. No, Jake, it's not that kind of hurt. They are gorillas, and we don't know what they're going to do. And it's not safe for them, and it could cost you $1 million just an insurance claim. You crazy? You want me to spend $1 million? No, why don't we leave the act the way it was? And that was it. And I don't think Ronald Reagan ever knew the kind of trouble he had out there, but there was chimp guano all over that stage and swinging and the lights. Man, accident, right? Accident made it work, and accident saved my life from getting ventilated. So that's accident. You hope it happens.
That's basically producing in a nutshell right there.
That is producing.
I don't think you need another anecdote to illustrate what producing
if you
is.
just know how to do that, producing.
Now listen, since this is for the Television Academy, let's just talk a bit about the Emmy Awards. In your career, you've been nominated for, I think we calculated 17 Emmys?
A lot of stuff, yeah.
How many have you won?
I don't know. It's 5, something like that.
It's 5? So, yeah, we're just
Okay.
a few minutes of wrapping up.
You got. Nobody's ever going to sit and look at this.
I will again. Is that funny?
Do me a favor, will you?
Yeah.
Just don't. No. Don't. I'm trying to make a point here, and he's saying it works. I'm saying I got to get up.
Ever again. Nobody.
There you go, Timmy. I like
That's
this.
not Timmy.
I know Timmy left, but anybody that doesn't agree with you is a Timmy. You know, I mean, anybody who says, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Timmy.
Lincoln.
Yeah, good. Okay, now I'm gonna introduce you to my daughter. Okay, have you got anything going? What's that mean? This is some kind of an Israeli fuck you or what? Okay.
Trust me, you'll know when you get an Israeli fuck you.
Oh yeah, you know. Oh, you know what happened in Afghanistan today? Italy surrendered. Go ahead. Okay. I know. See, now you're not going to ever. That's a good thing. You can cut some of this out.
I think we're going to have to.
I think so. Please. Okay. Now what was it? What was?
We were talking about. Are we rolling?
You said
we were
one
talking
last
about,
question.
We were talking about the Emmy Awards. Talk about how you feel about having received.
I love the
Emmys
Emmys.
and
I love the
17
Emmys, and I want to win a lot more. I think there are, as with anything, I think there are flaws, but in another 50 years, I think they'll correct one or two of them. I mean, the Emmy Awards is great, and I would never say anything about it. It's a very, very difficult assignment, particularly if you have 911 in the middle of it and you have to do it 4 times. On the Comedy Awards, we focused on paying tribute and honoring comics. It is difficult for one show to be everything to everybody. And when the Emmys do music and costumes and lighting and script and documentaries and I mean, the list is so long that it's difficult to really be passionately involved in each category and each award. It's worthwhile. I don't know the answer, but they do a valiant job, and I think it's wonderful. For me, the Emmys is a television show, the same as the Academy Award. It's a television show, an important television show, but a television show.
But in terms of the recognition that you've gotten, are there any particular nominations or awards that you were most proud of?
I think when the Emmys did their 25th anniversary and celebrated people that they thought had made a contribution, I liked that. I liked, I'm come on, I've been very, very lucky, and to have wound up not going to jail and wound up, no, I just kidding, but to have wound up with some recognition for what I do, where I basically am having a good time, is kind of a thrill. And to have people in the business say they like what you do is very rewarding. I think that the press is remiss when they criticize like the Emmys and say it wasn't this and it wasn't that. How'd you like for me to take a column of yours and tell you what I think of that, But it's fashionable to put it down. It's fashionable to say, well, it wasn't. It was a 3-hour thing. I mean, all of that stuff. But let's face it, that is a major part of our lives. Television, right now, our lives would not be what they are without television, and it's good to recognize it and pay tribute to it. Yeah, there's some things that could be shorter, but I'm as I've said before, I'm proud to be in a business that that brings so much entertainment, information, education, history, graphics, art, travel, geography. I mean, when you realize the palette, what you have available on television, and that's due to the commercially successful television industry. And when they say you did something worthwhile mentioning, that's kind of a thrill.
Is there anything you can point to in your career that you would call your proudest achievement?
When I did the inauguration of President George W. Bush, they called me for some strange reason because they had forgotten that they had to have an inauguration. So I was skiing with Stein Erikson, and they called me, and I had, I think, 15, 16, 17 days. And it was strange that they called me because politically I have, always been more outspoken. It's a long answer to a short question, but it's a good way to wrap up about what I'm really proud of. And so I get to New York, I get to Washington, and Jerry Weintraub said, George, you have to do this. And there's a way some people have of explaining. So I get to Washington, and I look around the room, and I'm the only person in Washington, D.C. with any facial hair. And I look around the room, and everybody in there is about 9 years old with sideburns cut up to here, and it's all white people. And so I said to them, excuse me, I had to break the ice a little bit, and I said, excuse me, but we're in the city with the largest black population anywhere in the United States, and I do not see one person of color here, and we may be 3 or 4 miles away from the nearest Jew. So next time I come back here, I'd love to see like 3 or 4 brothers and a half a dozen yarmulkes. The kid next to me says, Mr. Schlatter, that's my wife. Wait a minute. So.
Hang on. Rolling?
Okay. So I say
Well,
I'm in a city with the largest population, black population anywhere in the world, and I don't see one person of color here. And the next time I come, I'd like to see 3 brothers and a half a dozen yarmulkes. Kid next to me says, Mr. Schlatter, how do you spell yarmulke? And I said, we're going to be here. This is going to be tough, right? So anyhow, I begin to tell them that it's not a Republican celebration of past presidents, but rather a contemporary celebration of the 42nd inauguration of the President of the United States. That's what I'm there for. And that's what I would do. They had to do it. I didn't. And I said, I am proud to be here and I'm willing to be here, but to celebrate the presidency, not a victory celebration. Okay, bum, bum, bum. Now we have a few things where I'm going to put some black people on the show, and I'm doing some things with, I get Muhammad Ali to come for the show, and they said, are you here as a fan of George Bush? And she said, I'm not here because George Bush asked me, I'm here because George Schlatter asked me. And I went, oh, there's a tax wrap. So anyway, we go along, and I get Ricky Martin on the show. And I explained to him that he does the inauguration, and he's the only young man in Puerto Rico that can pick up a phone and get the President of the United States. So Ricky, do the show. He was supposed to be in Paris. And it was tense because it was cold, bitter cold, and it was snowing, and the instruments were freezing and whatever. And it was bitter cold, and but it went off very well. And with the end of the show, Ricky Martin went over, and he got with the president, and he got the president up. And if you remember, he danced with the president, and it was great. Okay, so one of the things in order to get people to do the show, because the Republican Party is not that into the Hollywood community, so I promised everybody a picture. 6 months go by, and no picture. And so finally, one day, 6 months to the day, an envelope comes, and it is a picture. It says, from the office of the president, and I open it up, and it is indeed a lovely letter and a picture of the president. It says, George Schlatter, deepest appreciation, your president, George W. Bush. And it's a great picture of the president, but he's standing with somebody else. It's not a picture of me with the president. So I said, that maybe is my prized possession out of all of the awards, a picture autographed from President George Bush of him standing with someone else. Now, if you've achieved that level of anonymity after this long, then show business is a success. Who else do you know has a picture with the President of the United States, deepest appreciation, and it's the wrong guy. So you take the Emmys and the Golden Globes and the Image Awards and the Hall of Fame Awards and the comedy and the music, whatever, right? Give me my picture of George W. Bush standing next to a writer by the name of Buzz Cohen. I wouldn't trade anything for that picture. It's on the wall. And nobody's ever seen the picture or heard the story. So since this is going to be in the bowels of the TV Academy, and no one's ever going to see it, so who did I tell? You guys are going to come out. You're going to go tell people. Nobody will believe you. They may believe her, but I don't think the rest of you guys have a trusting face. They're not going to believe you. So you're going to say, George Schlatter has a picture autographed to the wrong guy. People are going to say, sure, shut up. Have another drink. Now, did any of this...
Just one final question.
Oh, gee. He's been telling me one final question now for 3 days. What?
How would you like to be remembered?
As a guy that had George Bush signed the wrong picture. What else could you possibly hope? I mean, I think maybe it should say on my rock, it wasn't all my fault. I was here and I had a good time. I didn't hurt anybody. You know, made some people laugh. And great wife, 2 great children. And do I get paid for this? That would make me really happy.
You'll have to talk to the lady over
That's
there.
a no, isn't it?
I don't... Yeah, that's probably it.
What's he got there? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, is that okay?
I think that's good. Thank
Are
you very
all right?
much.
Because you don't need more than that. And you keep wanting to go into other places I don't want to get to, so you're fine.
Okay. I think, are we good?
You don't need any more on Ed Friendly than that. That was nice.
Trust me.
You son of a bitch. You know what the title of my book was going to be, and I can tell you this because we know each other well now. Huh?
What was the title of your book?
And they've advised against it. The title of the book was "They Found the Fuck Joke," and so they said I can't because that was Digby Wolf came down here one day and I was screaming at the censors, yelling, "I can't stand this pressure, and you guys are driving me crazy, and I can't stand the pressure." And I hang up the phone. Digby says, "Well, what happened?" I said, "They found the fuck joke." And so maybe but they said I can't call it that, so I'll have to call it something else.
I don't know. I think it'd be hard pressed to come up with a better title.
It wasn't all my fault. Works.
How about Simplicity Made Easy?
It's simplicity made easy.
You know, my friend Stanley Ralph Ross had a great title for his autobiography. Famous People Who Have Known Me.
I like that. I like that. Did he write it?
I don't know if he ever did. I don't think he did.
He was a funny guy.
Very funny.